right, we'll call this special work session to order on January 7th, 2021. Before I ask for an approval of the agenda, I just do feel compelled to start tonight's meeting with an acknowledgement of yesterday's armed riot at the U.S. Capitol, and know that that's heavy over all of us. The events obviously were horrific and traumatizing yesterday, and yet still tonight we have business to attend to regarding what the environment will look like for students and staff during the second semester. And it's a decision that has stirred up our own community's feelings of anxiety and fear. The pain and struggle of this past year is real, as is the resilience of this community. And while we may not always agree on the where and the how learning should be happening, I do believe that we all want the very best for our students and for each child to have what they need to fulfill their potential. I think it's really important for us to reaffirm tonight that the classrooms and the boardroom of MRH will continue to be safe and brave spaces. And I'm really thankful for the continued work of the district team to ensure we're fulfilling our mission and ensuring educational equity for all students. So I just wanted to open with those thoughts. Any other board members feel compelled to speak at the moment?
Yes, Katie, thank you for just recognizing the domestic terrorism that took place at our nation's capital. And I appreciate you doing that. I appreciate that the work that our board and our school district, our administration, our teachers are committed to doing. What happened yesterday is, one of the very unfortunate many reasons why we are focused on the work on our educational equity work and social justice. And so I just appreciate our district for not shying away from topics like this. And I sincerely appreciate all of the teachers that discussed what happened, that discussed the history that was made yesterday with our students and didn't try to even attempt to turn a blind eye to that. They discussed that with our students and it became a lesson. And so I just appreciate that. And that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just echo that. And I want to say thank you to Roxana for being kind of the figurehead for the district and kind of communicating that down to the teachers and jumping right on it and realizing that we run to these opportunities as learning lessons and something that we're preparing our students to be citizens in the 21st century. So citizenship is, unfortunately for our young people, a much heavier burden than maybe it seemed like when we were younger. And I appreciate this district doing what it can to prepare all of our children for that responsibility within our democracy, which we all have a responsibility to play in that. So thanks for jumping on that and responding.
All right. Well, with that, I'll ask for an approval of our agenda for the evening.
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Nikki. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Great. Well, our first update is the COVID data. Go ahead, Roxana.
All right, so we'll take a look at the COVID data this week as we do every week. When we take a look at what is happening across the state and across the county, numbers are up this week compared to where they were last week. You'll remember last week they had declined, and this week we're back up to where we were about 14 days ago. You'll see that the death rate is down. Remember, that's a lagging indicator, and so that typically follows any rises. The transmission rate is up slightly. If you recall last week, we had hovered down near 1. We're now back up a bit. When you look at the 7-day new case rate, you'll see that we are up. The 14-day case rate is actually holding steady. And again, that is those dips and troughs that we see. I did talk to the health department for quite some time this morning. They are seeing a little bit of a holiday bump, but they are cautiously optimistic at this point in time that it will not be as bad as they had feared. The positivity rate is up slightly from last report. Our zip code data has changed. So in the 63117 zip code area, the number of cases are down by 15. The 63143 is the same. When we look at what's going on with school-age children, we do see a decline in cases since its peak in November. In the last few days, we have seen countywide a few more cases than we've seen in prior day. The total positive cases at MRH is up by 3. Total, it's actually an 8-month total now, is 60 cases. We currently have, or at least as of Tuesday, 1 current active case among staff members. And as of Tuesday, we had 6 staff members on quarantine. 4 of those rolled off today, so our current total is 2. Does anyone have any questions about the COVID data?
All right. I'm used to seeing all of that, and I think obviously pretty straightforward. We'll move on, I suppose, to the update on COVID leave.
Right. So I had presented the idea to the board last time that as a district, even though the federal COVID leave had expired, that we should extend that leave to our staff members through the end of the school year. MSBA recommended that we do that by board resolution, which was attached. Nikki asked if we could get an opinion from Cindy Ormsby, which is also attached on the board agenda. She concurred that this was the correct approach. And so if you are in agreement to extend the leave, I would ask you to vote on that tonight so that we can afford our staff the same protections that they had prior to winter break.
Any questions, concerns there?
No questions or concerns. Thank you, Roxana, for reaching out to Cindy to get that clarification. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Roxana, is this something similar that other districts is doing also? I'm not sure if you're aware.
Many districts across the state are doing that. Not all, but I do believe it's the right thing to do. Okay. Provide some stability and provide stability in our staff, which is important for us as we educate kids.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that is an action item for this evening. So we can certainly revisit it if other questions come up, but otherwise I think we can move on to the reentry recommendations.
So Chris and Vince and I have been working very diligently, as you're aware, and we've been reporting since October at the time of the last vote. Since then, we have learned a lot, and Vince and Chris might want to chime in here. The biggest change I think we've seen over that time is early in the pandemic, we were hearing a lot about making decisions based on community thresholds, which is still a metric that's important to us. Since that time, we've had a number of public health agencies and a number of medical agencies begin to shift their guidance that schools really should remain open, and that while the community metrics are a factor that we need to pay close attention to, and we need to stay in close consideration with the health department, that we also need to look at 2 additional areas very closely. One is our mitigation controls. And so we have very thoroughly gone through all of the lists of recommended mitigation controls. The principals and I met Monday. We believe that our mitigation controls are, not going to say the best they can ever be, but they are very tight and certainly meet or exceed anything else that we're seeing happening regionally. And we feel very confident about that. Third area that we need to look at for decision making is our own internal numbers, which would include what's happening with our students and staff. And so we've been monitoring that. And at this point, that looks manageable. Chris, do you want to talk about auxiliary services? Because another part of this is what we're able to do with staffing.
Sure. So I'll start with food service. The AM PM scenarios that are being recommended by the buildings is specifically to avoid the meal times in the buildings, so that we can keep that level of risk out of the schools. So Irene and her team have been working diligently as well to come up with a way to feed our kids, to provide them the meals, both lunch and breakfast, that they need. But they'll be taking those items home with them to eat there rather than eating in person in the school building. They'll be intentionally providing items that are cold or frozen to discourage the kids eating them on their travels from the school to the home, so that those items get there. The preparation will be minimal and will be relatively similar to what we've been experiencing since the spring, as they've been providing curbside service. One other thing that I can't fail to mention is that on Wednesdays, which will be the cleanup day, or the day for teachers to catch up, the day for students to catch up, the day for us to get our buildings clean, will also be the day that we reopen curbside service for those students that are utilizing the virtual only option. So that will provide them, on that Wednesday, we'll provide them with meals and breakfasts for 5 days. So making sure that even if they aren't here in person, that they still have the ability to get a meal that's balanced and well prepared and healthy. And again, we are operating under the seamless summer mechanism through DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which provides meals not only to MRH students, but any student from 18 and under that would come. So that Wednesday is available for any student that's in our area. So any questions about that?
Chris, are there any designated hours on that Wednesday that the
There are, and Ed will be
curbside service is
working with
available?
Irene to get those hours and that schedule communicated
Okay.
to our community.
Vince, do you have anything you want to add? You've been working diligently. I'm part of our confidence in our mitigation controls is a very strong contact tracing team, and the work that we've already been doing with our school nursing staff and others who have received contact tracing. Vince, do you have anything you'd like to add from your corner?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I guess I would start by publicly thanking the school board and our community, even through hard conversations, to help us shape our thinking around this possible return to school. I know these have been hard conversations, and every email and every phone call that we've taken has helped along the journey, even if it's been a hard conversation. So I appreciate that. When I think about this journey as an administrator and a big fan of MRH, I love this place. I feel as confident as I've ever felt about a possible return to school. When I think about our other two junctures, when we considered this late summer and even in October, where I thought we were really going to come back, we're much more prepared today than we were in either one of those junctures, in terms of PPE, in terms of understanding community spread, in terms of contact tracing, and having students on campus, albeit limited, has helped us really practice a bit about how to kind of get in the flow of supporting students. There's no question if and when we return to in-person instruction, there'll be a bit of a learning curve, but I think we've scaffolded it beautifully. We'll never be no one's ever 100% ready, but I think that I feel as confident, as prepared as we ever have been. Our nurses are outstanding. That gives me additional confidence about a possible return to school. They are digging in deep. They are, to me, some of the area experts on contact tracing and the coronavirus, and they're very reasonable and smart and nuanced. And the school board's commitment to hiring a fourth person to join our team will be very helpful. So we have plans in place, and we will have someone here on January 25th if we decide to come back to school on that day, or whenever we decide to come back. So I feel good about it, and I want to thank everyone again for their support in this effort.
I'd like to also thank the principals. They have been working very diligently with parents, with teachers. We know that a tier 2 return has challenges of its own, and that there are many things that are going to be obstacles and hurdles for families. Despite those challenges, we believe it is the safest return option. We believe it is the correct option. And so for those reasons, on behalf of the entire administrative team, we're making a unanimous recommendation that we return to school in a Tier 2 environment in semester 2.
I have some questions, Roxana.
Yes.
So I know that we had talked about previously being worried about the spike based on the holidays. And it appears that fortunately that spike has not been as bad as anticipated, at least thus far. What if what if there is a vote to resume and the kids go back to school in the hybrid model and you start to see those numbers rise significantly in a way that makes you uncomfortable with the current tier? What happens then?
So what happens then is we make a call to the health department. And so we know what our 3 core metrics are. We need to also talk about the other metrics that are on those recommended guidelines. So we make calls to the health department. We talk about hospital status. We talk about their opinion about whether or not our being in school is of greater risk to students and faculty, or whether they believe our being in school contributes to community spread. We listen to that advice. So at any point, if we're hearing from the medical community that they believe that school has become an unsafe place to be or unsafe for our community, then we return to a Tier 3 virtual environment. And part of the recommendation tonight, thank you for saying that, Brandy, because I forgot to say, part of our recommendation tonight is to ask you for an allowance that would give our administrative team the authority to return to an all virtual environment within 24 hours at any time that was the case. Other reasons we might have to return to an all virtual environment is if at any time that third area that we look at, which is what is actually happening with students and staff on campus, if we see that there is something that looks like transmission or an outbreak in our school, that could be a reason why we would close immediately. If we have too many staff members to safely operate schools that are in quarantine or in isolation, that might be a reason why. And if at any point in time, I think this is highly unlikely, but if at any point in time when we look at our core mitigation strategies and we are unable to ensure that those are happening, that also might be a reason why we would need to immediately go back into Tier 3. And I think that, all of COVID we've learned has been unpredictable. What I do know is predictable is a very committed pandemic health response team that meets with us every Thursday that has given us great advice to this point. So I feel very confident being able to rely on their advice.
And can you tell me, did that response team exist back in October?
That they have been meeting together since I think actually last March, working on pieces. I have joined the group in October. I was not meeting with them prior to that point. And I also think, and I've been trying to seed you all with new information from the medical community as well. They have a lot more information now about how the virus actually works and specifically how that works in schools, which has been incredibly helpful to hear and think about, so that we're not just guessing about what works. We're actually modeling our plans off of what we've learned.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Roxana, can you go over just the guidance, the additional guidance that the CDC has given as far as having students and our staff back in school when we are in a red tier, if you will?
Well, so the CDC added language that basically said that even when we're in the highest risk categories, that schools could reopen if we had good mitigation controls in place and if our in-school numbers for students and staff were in safe zones. That has been reiterated and reaffirmed recently by the Harvard, Project Zero, or Return to Project Zero group. That has been reiterated by Harvard University, Tufts University, Brown University, Washington University. The leading universities in the country that have medical fields and epidemiologists are all now encouraging schools to return while watching those metrics. So it's not a blind return. It's a very thoughtful return based on information, and we would continue to look at those metrics every single day And that's part of the reason why that additional caveat of allowing us to return to an all virtual environment quickly is really important.
Is the pandemic task force also talking about this variant of the virus? Could you just give us a little information on that or whatever you have?
Yes, I asked that question specifically. I do a town hall with staff every Tuesday, and whatever questions they ask me on Tuesday, I take to the experts on Thursday because I think we want to know that. So today I asked specifically, and I'm going to read what they said so that I don't get it wrong, because I actually have that with me. But I asked today, how concerned should we be about the new variant of the coronavirus, such as what has been reported in England and South Africa specifically? The responses were that the strain is not more severe, but it may be more contagious. I am not going to pretend to know what all of this exactly means, but what they said was currently there's a 10% chance of contracting the virus. The new strain is a 15% chance of contracting. While that can be significant on a public health level, on an individual level, the difference there is not a dramatic increase of personal risk. They told me that school mitigation strategies will be equally effective against these identified variants, and that they are currently daily testing samples in St. Louis and have not yet detected any indication that the variant exists in our region.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Roxanne, I think you received some additional information, not hard and fast dates, but sort of vaccination scheduling for staff. Can you talk about that, since we have probably a pretty significant community viewership as well that might be interested?
Yes, so they are receiving vaccines. If you give me just a minute, you know I have my magic notebook where I write down what I've heard. So let me try to give you some of the highlights. It's a fairly lengthy conversation, so I'll try to be brief. Currently, the county health department reported today that they received 975 doses of vaccines for the 1A category, which includes healthcare workers, and they have prioritized school nurses. Again, they said because they would like schools to be open in safe ways, and so school nurses they've added to the 1A category. There are 10 to 20,000 workers who would qualify in 1A, so 975 doses. The state currently is told on a Wednesday, I believe, what they will get on Thursday, so there isn't a lot of advance information currently about when and how those doses will land. They are working on supply chain, and they are working on sites that can administer the vaccine. Our nurses, they told me they were sending, I don't know if we've actually received them. I checked with the nurses around noon and we had not yet. But they were told they would get an invitation today, which would allow them to go ahead and register for getting the vaccines themselves, which again is a strategy to help schools remain open. And so hopefully our nurses will be in that group within the next 2 to 3 weeks to get the first vaccines, excuse me. After that, they are projecting that school or teachers and perhaps other frontline school workers will be in the 1B group. At this point, best estimates, and no one knows for sure, is that vaccines will start filtering into the region around the last week of February or the first week of March. They hope that that is sooner, but that's what they're currently projecting. It does take 2 doses spaced about 3 weeks to 4 weeks apart. So full vaccine would then land for us around the beginning of April with a 14-day window after that before the vaccine becomes fully effective. They also know they're not going to have enough vaccine for all of the school staff members who might want it. So one of the topics we will discuss at CBTF and at Teacher Association is responsible ways to prioritize how we begin to allow staff who would like to receive the vaccine to sign up for the vaccine, because I assume we'll be given slots. Other things that Vince and his team and I will be discussing this week or next week, I guess, it's almost the end of the week, One of the things they're talking about is perhaps allowing school sites to sign up as a vaccination center, which would allow our nurses to administer vaccines to our teachers and perhaps our students. We have a lot of things to explore before we would do that. But that is something that we're looking at that could help speed getting the vaccine to the community. And if we can do that in any way, obviously we would like to help. So a lot of information coming. I think I have 10 pages of notes about how all that will work and what our part will be in it. We have a lot of more information we need to receive from the health department, but that's what that looks like currently.
Question. So I know that in the study with regard to vaccinations, they really hadn't been vaccinating anyone who was pregnant. And I love our MRH community. We're always getting surprised with new additions to the family. And so my question is, has that kind of been discussed with regard to our teachers? And is there a plan with regard to that if anyone is concerned about taking a vaccination because of that reason?
I have not heard anything about the vaccine in pregnant women. We had quite a lengthy conversation today about folks with known allergic reactions and what we could plan for. We also had additional conversations about this lingering effect or a adverse reaction where, you know, some people are reporting they have 1 to 2 days where they feel pretty bad. That has turned out to be less than 10% of folks taking the vaccine, but they did tell us to plan for that. So for example, a school would not want to vaccinate a large number of your staff on a single day during a school week and then have a whole bunch of absences. So there are just a lot of nuances that schools will have to work through and think about as we think about vaccines. So I want to let you know the task force will continue to work. We'll stay very close to that and be coming back to you with more ideas about how we can do that in a way that's most beneficial for the community.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm thankful that there's good advocacy happening around getting teachers and other school staff in line for the vaccine. And I also acknowledge that it is highly unpredictable right now, the logistical flow of that. So yeah, I know I heard a piece on NPR today about educators saying, like, at least we know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel here and it's not a train coming at us. So that's a good thing.
The other thing I would say I heard today about vaccines, just real quickly, because you may be interested, is this new variant of COVID. The vaccine is still effective against the variant. And they also said that because they have a vaccine now, and I won't try to go into all the reasons why medically, but that if there was a deviation in the strain, it would be a month or two before they could have a new vaccine that would meet the variation. It wouldn't be months or years because it's much easier to replicate a variant once they have a working vaccine. So that was also very good news for me.
Roxana, I want to just probe a little bit more. I appreciate that we're getting this recommendation as a unified recommendation from the building principals and from the admin team. And I acknowledge that, we've heard from maybe not directly from every teacher in the district, but, we are certainly hearing the aggregate of the voices of teachers. I know that there are many who have been, back in buildings for a while, that we have many who have, said that they will do what they are asked to do and will take the precautions. I recognize that there are still a few barriers for, some individuals. Just want to acknowledge, I don't necessarily know if this isn't really a question, but an acknowledgement that, we recognize that every one of our teachers have their own sort of family concerns or, their own, children with that create, extra layers of consideration for them. And I just, again, want to acknowledge that the board is, and the admin team are thinking about these things. We may not be able to tailor every individual staff members, solution, but it seems like we're working pretty hard to at least try to be responsive to that. So, I do, again, appreciate especially the principals who I know are working with individuals to, try to address specific situations. And I'm not sure if there is, if there's anything specific there to elevate, but I do, again, appreciate that there's continued communication flow with the town halls, and, and again, hopefully folks are getting support to work through their particular circumstances.
That would be our desire as well. I mean, we've heard from a lot of folks, and you're very right. Everybody's individual circumstance, all the way across, families and teachers, really have a lot to do with what is the preferred option for them. And we know that no solution that we can bring meet everybody's needs equally. So that is something that we continue to hear and listen. We've tried to provide time and space for that, and we are certainly asking continually to hear feedback. And I walked the building with a teacher today, and we moved desks and we rearranged plexi, and we'll continue to do those things and make whatever kinds of improvements to our physical space that we can make to try to address those concerns.
I don't really have a question, more of a comment. I just want to express my sincere appreciation to our admin, most especially Roxana. I want to thank you for your grace. It has been quite an unbelievable journey. It's going to be a continued journey, but you have delivered to us what we have asked. You've been transparent. You have communicated. You have spent countless hours with some of us and continue to do so with such a positive attitude. You're very honest. And I think grace is a word that we've been using a lot here recently. And I just think that I just wanted to go on record and thank you for your grace and for your leadership during this most unprecedented time. So thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Roxana, as we move forward tonight, for families who may continue to have questions about their own particular situations or about the details of how a return to building would look, can we just remind folks where information is and what all is available?
Absolutely. We do have, and Ed may want to chime in, we do have a COVID website that has lots of information. We did a return to learning handbook that is available. We have links to each specific building plan. I know that the principals have additional communication that will go out once they know what the landscape looks like for second semester. They've worked on videos and presentations around all of our mitigation measures. We will have additional information coming out as long as we're in a tier 2 hybrid about class configurations and bus routes. So all of those things are planned to come out in short order. I know Ed is prepared to make a statement either way tonight to let folks know kind of where we are. So we do have a pretty tight communication plan that is ready to roll once we get some communication. And we still have a few details that need to be ironed out because we're waiting to find out, how to firm up some definite plans. So we plan to communicate early and often. If families still have individual needs, we ask that they communicate with their principals, and the principals and Vince and his team will assist in trying to make whatever connections we can make to try to find solutions that work for families.
Roxana, I know that the district asked for parents to make choices on like the tier that they want to be in by December 22nd. but if someone should change their mind and want to go the all virtual option with the PLP, is that still possible?
If you're in grades K through 6, we can do that very easily because we're using our teachers, and we went ahead and purchased additional seats on the platform because we're using some of those seats as interventions with our kids who were even coming in person. So that's fairly easy to do. Just contact your principal. They can, in fact, assist you with that and give you a lot of information about improvements we've made in that programming as well. If you are in grades 7 through 12, again, because of certifications and the way that secondary courses work, we would need to enroll you in a MOCAP course. Our preferred MOCAP vendor is Launch because they have certified Missouri teachers who also do some synchronous learning. We may or may not be able to get that done because of their enrollment deadlines and their enrollments, because those are not Missouri teachers. But there are lots of other Launch courses. So we use MU Online. We've got other options. We'll work to find options that fit. So yes, if anybody wants to do that, we'll work with you and figure out what we can get figured out. I just want to say that the secondary did have some enrollment deadlines that we're working with external vendors.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, we've obviously spent a lot of time on this, not nearly as much time as our admin team has spent on this. So while it may not all be in the conversation tonight, I think we've all had lots to review and digest and lots of backup for decisions that we'll be making here. So if there aren't any other comments, we can move into the action items. Can I have a motion on the COVID leave resolution?
I move to approve the COVID-19 leave resolution as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Brandy and Ralph. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.
Opposed? Motion passes. Motion on the school reentry recommendation.
I move to approve the reentry recommendation as submitted.
Second.
So we are voting on a move to begin semester 2 in a tier 2 hybrid, giving admin the ability to return to a more restrictive format if community conditions or school conditions affirm that. All those.
Yes, that is so moved.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Can I have a motion to convene an executive session?
I move to enter into executive session in accordance with section 610.021 subsections 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, and 13, and section 610.022 of the revised statutes of Missouri on January 7, 2021 for the following specific reasons: personnel matters.
Second.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Wes. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, we'll adjourn this and reconvene an executive session. Thanks.
Thanks.